Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, we're going to be talking about scaling your businesses, in particular, scaling HR services through technology and whatnot with a company called ScaleHR. So with me today is Jeff Waldman. He is the founder and principal of ScaleHR. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Great. Thank you for having me.
So ScaleHR is the name of your business. It's pretty self-explanatory, and we're going to get into the details of really what you're doing over there as well and the niche that you're occupying. But before I do that, I would love to hear you answer the first question that I like to ask, which is, in your experience, what are three things that every entrepreneur needs to know?
That's a pretty loaded question, Lance. I guess from my point of view, I think the three things that every entrepreneur needs to know is they need to understand risk. And so I think that's the first thing, because if you think that going into a business has 0% risk, you're basically dreaming, right? So you need to have an ability to deal with higher risk than you would normally. I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is, you really have to have a strong business acumen, and it's not just about the actual idea or the product or service that you're selling, but you need to be well versed in all areas of business, whether that be finance, sales, marketing, strategy, people management, dealing with contractors, vendors, all of those things, all have to be part of your repertoire. And I think the third thing is you need to be self-driven, right? And I think obviously if you're starting a business, you're on your own, and it's something that you need to find the motivation from somewhere, and it starts with you. And I think you need to know how to drive yourself. And sure, there are days where I'm thinking, like, what the hell am I doing? And why did I start this 2 years ago? I should be better served working for someone else. And then there are days where I'm on cloud nine. So I think those are the three things for me that stand out.
Yeah. And the one that you were talking about, like the strong business acumen, is that something that you came into your entrepreneurial journey with a business degree or something like that? Where did you get your strong business acumen?
So I actually have a business background, degree in commerce. I'm from Vancouver originally, so I went to Sauder School of Business in British Columbia. Business wasn't natural for me, actually. I didn't come from a entrepreneurial family. My parents are both sort of hard workers, done 9 to 5, and I didn't really have anyone to look up to. I kind of fell into business, from an education standpoint, when I realized I was really good at math, and it was just sort of a natural thing for me, and I understood it. And so I naturally fell into business. I knew that it was something that I would like, and it turned out to be true. And so the entrepreneurial journey was not something that was built into my brain early on. It kind of happened naturally, I guess.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And I know that ScaleHR isn't your first business either. And so before we get into, I guess, some of the backstory of the journey, why don't you tell me a little bit about ScaleHR? What problems are you guys trying to solve over there?
So we basically work with growing SMBs, so small, mid-sized companies. And the key word is growing, because what small, mid-sized companies, have happened is that when they start to grow, and at 20 employees, 30 employees, 50 and higher, things start to break, and things start to break from a people standpoint. And it's a very broad area. I'm in HR, and so and they don't have the resources and money to hire a whole team, and that's very expensive. And so where we come in is we will work with those organizations on a fractional basis, on outsourcing basis, to minimize their costs, but they still have us as leadership expert, HR expert, to be able to actually solve their problems for them, do the work for them at a fraction of a price if they were to hire a team.
Yeah. Yeah. So a very similar model to what we have actually at Ampli Media, where we come in as that marketing arm, the fractional kind of piece that's required to fill any gaps that a client might have there. You're doing it on the HR side. I love that you have this really hyper focus though on companies that are rapidly growing for two reasons. I think one, like what you just said, in terms of there's a stage in a business's life cycle or growth cycle that they get to where things do really start to fall apart. They really start to break. We're experiencing that actually at Ampli Media. And so, in the last year, we went from 12 people to now we're around 24 people, something like that, 23. And so I started really noticing it, like you said, around that 20 person mark is where it's like, okay, our processes aren't as refined as what they need to be. We don't have the right procedures in place. There's things that are there. There's definitely some gaps, and we don't have the expertise in house, and we can't afford that. And so, yeah, like it's a perfect fit for what you're doing there. But then also, like with these rapidly growing companies, not only are they exciting to work with, but there's an ongoing need, right, there, because there's so many things that you can do from an HR perspective, because it's critical to the success of those companies. So it's a wonderful spot for you to have your business based.
Yeah, I mean, it takes time. I mean, obviously, when you're building a foundation of a house, I mean, that doesn't happen overnight, and so it's a very similar analogy here is that a lot of founders, leaders of companies are technical experts, right? So they're building like a marketing technology or a fintech product. That's where their head is at. And quite often, many of these people, have never managed people before. So, and they're, automatically, forced to manage people because of their founder title and status. So, and then when that happens, things start to fall apart. You start to experience some productivity issues. You start to experience that turnover. You start to experience, higher costs for hiring people, and there's a whole array of things that happen. And then oftentimes, I'll get a call, and it usually starts off with the founder saying, Jeff, I read an article. Okay, stop right there. Right? Forget about the article. Well, why is that? Because they're reading articles about Netflix, Airbnb, Google, Facebook, but they are big tech companies that have lots of money, and they've already been through that journey. They're far ahead. You need to start at the basic ground level, and so the relationship that we have with these companies tends to be long term. And I say long term, maybe about 2 to about 3 years, because it does take time to kind of build, the infrastructure. And then even when they do hire a team, and then we actually help them, hire the HR team, they still need ongoing support because they're still growing. They might be going for a Series A, and there's a million things going on at once. And so we can be that voice of reason to help the HR leader and the HR team make sure that they're focused on the right things, and also advise the leadership team as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that I saw on your website too, which again I think is just a really brilliant aspect of your service, is the tech stack part of the equation too, right? Because there's so many tools out there that are being developed that are accessible now to small businesses. There's been, software as a service has really democratized great technology, I think. And so smaller companies can access that, and the costs grow usually on a per seat basis oftentimes. So they grow with the growing company, right? And so it's something that's very affordable. You guys will come in and you'll actually have recommendations there and help them figure out what tech stack they need, and making sure everything is talking to each other and automating what can be automated and so on, which is a huge savings too for those companies.
Yeah, so a big part of our service is doing that. I mean, as you said, Lan, technology, there's a million and one platforms out there, and most of my peers, leading HR for their companies really I would say, don't have a full understanding of all of the different tools that they can use. And it normally
Yeah.
starts by them asking their close network, what are you using for hiring? What are you using for performance management? And it starts to be like a hodgepodge of solution. And so one of our beliefs is that how you scale HR, a big component of that is using the right technology, using the right tools that are cost effective, right? Obviously, if you're a small company, you don't have as much money to spend and burn on software as you would if you're a 5,000 person organization. So that's the critical part, and that's a massive opportunity right now. And we've done several projects on that, not only sort of walking them through the business side of it and understanding the people element to it, but then once we have that understanding, then we can identify the right tools and then actually help them roll them out, and then actually measure success later on.
Yeah.
We have a very deep network of HR tech solutions out there from around the world. We do try to stick to Canadian one, but of course there are many great solutions that are based in the US, the UK, Australia and Asia. So we have deep relationship with these companies, and we know firsthand as to what's going to happen from a product standpoint. We know exactly when new launches will be dropped and so on.
Yeah. And I love the focus that you have on providing some preferential treatment to the vendors who are here in Canada as well. I think that's really great. A question for you, just with the pandemic and this hybrid work environment that most businesses are kind of returning to, and I mean there's still lots of them, ours included, who haven't returned back to the office yet. What changes from an HR standpoint have you seen? What trends, what nuances, I guess, have really changed from pre-COVID to this environment that we're in now?
So that's a great question. So I'm actually speaking at a conference next week, Tech Talent North in Toronto, in October 18th, and I'll be co-leading a session on rethinking total rewards. And it's a specific HR in tech audience. And so what's really changed, which is going to be part of our talk, is that we've been forced to go from a 5-day a week in person, for the most part, in an office, being around your peers physically, to working from home. And so it's a huge reliance on technology. So video technology, collaborative software, making sure that people have access. So cloud technology, all of these things are all now a must-have, compulsory tool. It's no longer a nice to have. If you download documents on your hard drive, that's like 1982, right? So so all of these things, that it's a heavy reliance on technology, whether it be cloud computing, laptop, your mobile device. That is your key connection. The second big change has been, because people are working from home, okay, there's less of a separation between work and personal life. And I've been a long advocate that those who work in a professional setting, the white collar, I guess, services type organization, technology, you can't turn off work and just go into your personal life and then go back to it. Those days are gone. But you can manage it. Okay. And so what we're saying is that there is a significant increase in things like burnout, stress, mental health. And so I've been doing quite a bit of research lately. And so from an HR standpoint, it's ensuring that people feel connected, engaged to the workplace and to each other when you're working with that technology. The second thing is to really overlay employee well-being to all of your HR strategies going forward, because you want to avoid things like burnout, stress, mental health, all of these things. And that's why you're seeing a massive uptick in investment for well-being. So those are the two key things.
Yeah, and I really like what you're talking about with regard to the blending of the personal life and the professional life, the work life, right? And just how we as a society haven't had this blending occur, and like what we have going on right now for generations. And so me as an entrepreneur, yourself as well, I'd imagine this is old hat, right? Like this is something that you've dealt with as you're growing your business. There's always, like, as entrepreneurs, there's always has that blending occurring. But for the general workforce, it's new. And that's one of the things that has really I've struggled with in really recognizing and appreciating how my staff now are acting a little bit more like how I have been for years, but they aren't used to that, and so it's creating that stress, the anxiety, just around that aspect of trying to create that separation. Do you think that, regardless of the technology that's out there, that the days of having that work-life separation that we historically have thought about, do you think that's over now? Like, can employees even function today in a world where the blending has already occurred, if they try to separate themselves from that blend?
So it's a bit of a balanced question, like a balanced answer. So to think of the world of work today using old thoughts is gone. Okay, so back in the day, like you would go to an office and then you would leave your laptop there,
Yeah.
and you didn't have a smartphone, right?
Yeah.
So there was no way for you to be connected to work, even if you worked for a tech company, for example. Now everything is here; it's always with you. So the trick, though, so that blending will always be there. But I think what I'm seeing is a more consistent and sort of conscientious effort to turn things off, when you want to, and knowing yourself, and everyone's different, right? And so for me, I could be like a late night owl, and that's when I do my sort of thinking. For you, Lance, maybe at sort of 7 a.m. in the morning, and or earlier. It really needs to ensure that this whole customization and flexibility in personalizing how you work need to be there. And so that's why managers need to be really cognizant. They need to really know their people. You can't put a blanket policy over everybody. You need to have a policy that's flexible enough so that managers can be really cautious. Hey, Lance is this type of a person, needs this support and this. Joe over here needs A, B, and C, and Mary, right? So the blending will always be there, unless you work in an organization that builds things, a manufacturing plant where you can just sort of turn things on and off, and that's easy. But we're now a service, thought, brain power type of workforose. So.
The thought workforce, right? Where you have to apply that. It's I don't think that we're ever returning back to a place like that again. And so there's a lot of people that historically have talked about the work-life balance, and you hear this oftentimes within the entrepreneurial community, right? Where it's like, like you have to figure out a way to separate it as an entrepreneur as well, and so on. And there's a part of me that kind of wants to reject that now. It's kind of like, no, you know what? This is how I am. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay to have that blending occur. But the sensitivity part of it that I have to insert is just that not everybody else is like me on my team. And so, like you said, you have to really balance all of these different types of personalities. That, I think, is going to be the biggest challenge for leaders going forward now. I think so. How do you, how do you support them? How do you coach them? Is there, how are you helping them navigate through that? Because it's not now anymore just kind of like a one size fits all of my employees. It's very, very customized, or needs to be, if you're going to have a really happy, productive workforce.
So I always start with the place of data. right? So really
Okay.
understanding. So I mean, if you have 20 employees, 200, it doesn't really matter. But I try to collect information to establish a baseline as
Yeah.
to what people are actually feeling. And there's a bunch of different areas. So, leadership, how I'm feeling from a wellness, well-being perspective, how things are going, from a recognition standpoint, career progression, all these different elements that are critically important in any organization. So, after looking at the data, you can sort of start to see where some of the strengths are and then where the opportunities are. And then I drill deep into people. And it's really important for managers. They need to be constantly, working with a coach. I firmly believe that every single manager should have a coach.
Yeah.
And that person, whether it's me or anyone, it doesn't matter, but that person can actually work with that manager to be able to build those skills. They're already technical experts. They already know the function, but when it comes to managing people, that's a continuous sort of lifelong journey that
Yeah.
will continue to change over time. And
Yeah.
so there needs to be that ongoing communication dialogue, and especially when people are working from home, maybe they're working in a co-working space, but there's that separation, that physical separation. So you need to be talking more, right? You need to be communicating more with the people. And quite frankly, managers need to be listening. They need to listen. I mean, the
Yeah.
people are saying, and they need to watch, need to analyze the data. So I think so that is really where I start. It's difficult just to be able to help someone if I don't have that sort of baseline of understanding. But it's something, and then we will drill deep into scenarios, and we come up with proper solutions and game plan going forward.
Hmm.
But it's always around employee well-being, and it's always around supporting people through communication and
Yeah.
empathy and understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. And the data starting from there, it's just it's really interesting because in this remote work environment, you have to rely on digital data to really figure some of that stuff out, right? Like and surveying and so on, I would imagine. Where in the past, when we were all in the same physical location, the data that you were collecting was a lot of visual data and
Yeah,
the
I
soft
guess.
touch points, right? Where it's like you can kind of tell when somebody's stressed out, you can see it, but I can't tell if my employee is stressed out if I'm not having, like you said, very regular conversations with them. And when they're remote, that sometimes doesn't happen because for me as the leader of Ample Media, it's usually the squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of scenario where it's like there's so many other things I'm pulled in different directions, and so it's hard for me to have those touch points unless something like really breaks. And so yeah, having a data set that a person could see some of those leading indicators prior to something getting going
You're
haywire.
absolutely right. I think also too, obviously video is a very powerful tool. Video
Yeah.
doesn't have the same look. If you were to rank, it's an in-person meeting in a meeting room, sort of face-to-face versus a video call like this, obviously that sort of in-person room is the best option. But given people now work from, different cities and geography, that's not possible. So this is the second next best thing. And quite frankly, it's quite good because you're still communicating with someone.
Yeah.
You're still having those conversations. So that part hasn't changed. And, it's just the mechanism for which you're communicating has changed. Now you've got, advantages of chat technology. You have, obviously email been around forever, but collaborative software, video, all these different things. And so you need to use all of them at your disposal. And quite frankly, a lot of people that are in the tech industry or smaller organizations love the flexibility of working from home.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, completely. Completely. Now, we talked a lot about HR, and I love having experts on the show, because we were able to get some good ideas out there in the hands of some of our audience who might be able to utilize or tap into that expertise. And so I really appreciate that. Now, just going back to your journey, though, I'd love to ask you a couple more questions about that. And so in terms of your personal or entrepreneurial adventures that you've been on to date. I know this isn't your first business, but if we were to, be able to gift you $1 million at the start of ScaleHR, what would you have done differently than what you did as you were growing and scaling your business?
So that's a tough question, because I've always been quite lean in everything I've done. I think for me, yet if I had $1 million, I probably would have invested in a business coach, earlier. I do have one now, right? And I had someone who I work with, but I would have done that sort of right out of the gate. I also would have had someone, I would have partnered with an organization like an Amplify Media from a marketing standpoint and a sales strategy point of view. I didn't do that sort of out of the gate because I didn't have, that ability. I also would have invested in my technology infrastructure earlier. That takes time to kind of evolve, and so I use Google Workspace now. But what's missing from that is actually optimizing it, right? And I haven't done that, right? So I probably would have invested earlier in that. I probably would have invested some money in actually building my own software as well. I have some services, that I offer that I can actually kind of probably roll into a product, a very, lightweight type of thing. I probably would have done that earlier as well. I think those are the key things. And then obviously on the marketing and sales front, social media, those types of things, brand awareness, and then obviously my website. It's okay. But I, definitely need to be improved. And I think I probably would have done those things earlier in the game if I had that kind of capital. But of course, that's not always the case.
No. So. No, when you're bootstrapping, right? You got to pick off the things that are the biggest priority at the time, the biggest pain points. And so, yeah, we have to make those choices. Hey, it's fascinating just to hear how different entrepreneurs will reflect back and what it is that they'll focus on. Coaching is one of the ones that does come up a lot. And actually like marketing is one too, that we hear a lot too, where people are like, yeah, I wish I would have had that figured out a little bit sooner, because, with good marketing comes more sales, more customers is the idea, right? So from a personal perspective, I'm curious about what your take is on the entrepreneurial lifestyle. What do you love about it? What do you find most difficult about it?
So what I love about it is that you have extreme flexibility to manage your day, manage your time, manage your schedule, all these types of things. If you want to take a holiday and it's a working holiday, you can do that. You have the most flexibility basically out of any profession out there, which I love. I absolutely love that. I can spend more time with my family if I want to, which I do. I'm very involved in my kids' lives, and that would only be possible, sort of doing what I'm doing now. I like the ability that I can create, anything I want. And, if I have some great ideas, I can go ahead and do them. And, it's my vision. It's my concept. I own it. I take, full accountability for it. I think the downside to it, obviously, is, you don't have that steady paycheck every day. So if you're risk averse, this is not for you. And I learned earlier that I actually enjoy taking a risk. I find it thrilling. And so I think, so if the downside, obviously, the revenue generation part, the income, some days are very stressful because the sort of emotional toll that it takes on you, being responsible for employees, not knowing if you're going to be able to afford your cost next month, all of these type of things, it becomes your problem, right? Not somebody else's. So I guess from an emotional standpoint, there's a lot of roller coasters, that I go through. But I wouldn't, trade it, for anything. So.
Yeah. So how do you yourself manage that emotional roller coaster? What do you do for your own self?
So I'm a huge sports guy, both fan, but also, athlete too. And so although my sort of sport playing days have, gone down the hill, I try to exercise, when I can. I do read, I take walks, I'll take breaks, I'll do all of those types of things. Just here's a good one right here.
Yeah.
They settle out of not giving a fuck. So, or, reading things like Mindset. This is an excellent book here. So, these are the types of things that sort of help me. But I also have, it's a mindset too.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm going to figure it out. I may not have it, the answer now, but I have that confidence in myself that I'm going to figure it out. And instead of freaking out, and then it sort of overtakes my whole being, I have trained myself to really say, Jeff, take a deep breath. You've got this,
Yeah.
and you'll figure it out. If you need to step away for an hour and then come back to it, that's fine too. So,
Yeah.
deep breathing. I do all of these things. I'm not a huge, like app like Headspace or Calm or what have you. Some people love them. I find they don't work for me.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just changing my scenery,
Yeah.
changing things up a little bit. Maybe I'll go downtown to work at the co-working space, that I work at. That might kind of help me sort of, get out of a rut, what have you. Maybe go to Montreal and spend time with my wife's family while working, things like that.
Yeah. It's interesting how everybody approaches things. I'm similar to you in the sense where the physicality part of like sports and being active really, really helps me with my mental health, I think, a lot. And I love just taking walks and pondering things and letting my mind kind of figure like work on things in kind of in the background as I'm relaxing or enjoying some of that time too. And the quote that you had there just around I can figure it out. I have trust in myself to figure it out. And I 100% agree with you on that. I think all entrepreneurs have to have that where it's like, no, like everything's figure outable. I don't think it's a word, but it's figure outable. And that's the thing is if when we're approaching the challenges out there that we face or that society faces, I mean, that's where we come up with all these amazing ideas and business opportunities as well as it's usually faced with some sort of adversity, and us as entrepreneurs are finding a way to solve that problem. And so it's figure outable. Yeah. Anyway,
Exactly.
yeah, I really appreciate you providing the insights that you did on the HR side of things. I think that's going to really help out a lot of business owners as they start to, really grapple with and try to figure out how to navigate where we're at today in the work environment. But then also you're sharing your history and your entrepreneurial insights is just really great too. So thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
And thank you for having me, Lance.
If somebody wanted to reach out to you or to find out more about ScaleHR, what's the best way for them to do that?
Our website, GoScaleHR.com. You can, send an email, Jeff@GoScaleHR.com. I'm all over social media, also LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find me there. And there is another Jeff Waldman. He does finance. That's not me. So I'm the other one in HR, but I'm findable. So I'm all over the place. So that's the best way to do that.
Excellent. Thanks again. Really appreciate it. And for those of you who appreciated this episode and what Jeff had to say, we have lots of other interviews over in the archives at amplifyyourbusiness.ca. And of course, if you prefer to listen to this in an audio format only, head over to your favorite podcasting platform and you'll be able to find us there by searching Amplify Your Business. Until next time, everybody have a prosperous day.